Hey guys, what's going on? Paul here, and back with we're regular now. We can call it the weekly live stream. I have Paddy back here again today, and a very familiar voice from the Cardano community joining us today with AOS Army of Spies. Guys, very welcome. Thanks for joining.
Thanks very much, Paul. Thanks very much. Yeah, what's week four? Week four. Yeah, I think so. If we can keep track. So yeah, just gotta keep it going and get a good more amount of viewers in here and get the notifications out. I suppose I think you were chatting about the algorithm. There's always a problem with the algorithm. But yeah, welcome, Army of Spies. It's great to have you on, man.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you on. I'd say one of the and what's going on. I don't know how you keep up your consistency for every single morning that I come out here. I know there's going to be an Army of Spies video there with all the latest, and not just Cardano. I like bringing in parts outside of Cardano because there's so much affects us as well that's going on in the overall industry. But we'll get into some of that as we go through the call here. We'll go through I have a few questions for you. There's a few hot topics within Cardano. We'll go through them. Anyone with questions, do let us know as well. Let us know how the audio, everything like that is coming through. Share the video out. If you think others would like to come in, have questions, give it a like as well. And we will kick it off now in a second.
I'll just add, make sure that those videos come out every day, because what I do is I get ready for work, I have a coffee, I stick my YouTube on, so once those stop appearing, I'm going to let you know.
Man,
it's part of my routine now.
Man, yeah, that was definitely sort of part of the plan. I was trying to find a time when the videos might be like accessible to people kind of in different time zones, because back in the last cycle, long before I had anything in Cardano on YouTube, there were a few people who had shows that would come out every morning. And even if they weren't the best analysts, even if they didn't have the best content, I knew they would be there. So when I got in the shower, I could listen to them in the shower, and I was like, this guy is not the best analyst on crypto, but he's there every morning when I get in the shower. So somehow I end up listening to him the most. And I was like, I can also fill that role in Cardano. Even if I am the weakest, I can still be there when we're getting ready in the morning.
Oh, far from the weakest, I would say. One of my questions was, how do you stay so consistent that it's 5 days a week, every weekday, there's going to be a video there? How do you keep that consistency up?
Yeah. So this, I kind of like, I sort of work backwards, and it sort of, for me, it has to be like underpinned by a certain line of thinking. So I sort of start with the movie Fight Club, that scene where the character says, "You are not a special or unique snowflake." And so I start there, which convinces me that it's okay every single day to press record and just talk for 10 or 20 minutes, because even if I do a terrible job, it's not really going to impact Cardano. So it's okay every day to just hit that record button, make the video. And even if it's not the best content in the world, even if it's no matter what it ends up being, it's not really going to have some kind of gigantic detrimental effect on the world, because I'm not some kind of special or unique snowflake. So that convinced me in the beginning just to hit that record button every single day. And then each day I just tried to prepare better. So all the questions went into how to prepare for it, because I knew every day it was going to be okay to hit that record button, talk for 10 to 20 minutes, and maybe people would find value in it. But if not, the world's not going to like explode, and Cardano is not going to die or explode, because I'm just one guy, not a special or unique snowflake in Cardano, which is full of brilliant people anyways. So that's how I go about it.
Nice. Yeah, I think people really appreciate the honest opinions on it. And that's what people, I think in Cardano as well, people that watch YouTube from the Cardano community, they're looking for something different than we see in lots of the rest of crypto. A lot of the rest of crypto is all price, and it's all pump this and pump that. And I think within Cardano, we have a lot of YouTubers, or whatever you want to call ourselves, that put out content that's away from that, that's talking about the ecosystem, talking about what's building, and trying to look at fundamentals rather than just looking at price and everything like that. I've no problem with people talking about price. I do it from time to time as well. I think it's part of it, but I think it's good to have the mix there as well.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the great things. I think the Cardano sort of content makers, we've all kind of like moved much more in that direction than a lot of other ecosystems. And there's obviously there's a huge for content, there's a huge payoff in doing the price stuff and all the charting. I've always called it Fibonaccios. But doing all the charting stuff, there's a huge dopamine payoff. And I mean, that's really what social media has become. It's like to be a successful content creator in social media, period, whether it's YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, it basically like the recipe has become, whether for better or worse, how hard can you hit those dopamine triggers? And that's why we get the kind of content that's so popular today. Like you go on Instagram and it's like there's certain dopamine triggers. It's like, is it a beautiful girl who is maybe scantily clad? That'll probably get a lot of views. And it's like in crypto, price talk hits those same kind of dopamine triggers. It's like if you're the charting stuff, I mean, it's like you can almost I imagine the viewers like brains just sort of lighting up, those dopamine pathways just lighting up as they think about the price going up and updates on the price going up. And I mean, for better or worse, that's what social media has become. It's like this dopamine feeding machine, and it's all across social media.
You would need to be the common thing I see is you have a dramatic face look with 100 or 1000x as your thumbnail just to get in all those clicks and views.
100%. Like that's it. Like have some number of zeros after a one and look extremely surprised in the thumbnail. Have your face extremely surprised in the thumbnail, and like people are already like, "There's my dopamine. Let's get it. Let me get in there. I want that."
That's crypto marketing 101. That's what you learned.
100%.
Yeah, it's very tempting to go the clickbait route. Lots of times, even when it's not price, it's about something in the community, and I can see why lots of people go that way. It does get the views, definitely does. But I think over time, you start to get your regular viewers that like the way you do the content, so you don't have to go that way. It's we'll see how the next market goes. But on to why Cardano? Why concentrate on Cardano, or why did you end up being so deep into the Cardano community?
Man, yeah, it was kind of a natural progression for me. I sort of got into Bitcoin back in that, like, I can't really remember if I first heard of Bitcoin in like 2012 or 2013. I have a really good friend who claims we had a Bitcoin discussion like in 2011 or 2012. But I was definitely pretty deep into Bitcoin by the time of the Mt. Gox crash, because I sort of like, as it was going on, I was posting about it on my Facebook account back then. Right. Like as the protesters were like outside the offices in Japan, and Mark Karpelès was like missing, and people are talking about, you know, whether or not he spilled Starbucks all over his keyboard, which was something that famously happened to him. So I was sort of like live blogging that as I was going down, and all my friends were like, "What are you even talking about? Biddle coins? What are biddle coins? We don't even know what this is." So I was already doing all that Bitcoin stuff then, and then Ethereum came along, and I was like, "Oh, programmability. This sounds like a good thing." So I bought Ethereum when it was really low, like 72 cents, and I thought I was a genius when I sold it at like, you know, I bought it at like 72 cents, and something like that, and I sold it at like $12 or something, and I was like, "I'm a genius investor." And within like 12 months, it had gone from that to something like 1,400 in that next peak, and I was like, I'm an idiot. So went through that whole cycle. Like I sold it 10x. I thought it was great. And then it proceeded to, you know, go way beyond that. Then in the next cycle, I was sort of looking around and I was like, man, these have been great opportunities with Bitcoin and Ethereum. And so far, if this pattern continues with sort of like this growth and functionality in crypto, what's going to be the next thing? And that's when I happened upon the famous Charles Whiteboard video that I think so many of us in Cardano have seen. And I saw that video and everything he said made sense. But more important than that, I tend to always sort of bet on the jockey and not the horse. And I was watching Charles go through this and I was like, this is a guy who obviously has a certain level of understanding of crypto in general. Crypto is obviously like deep in his DNA at this point. And I was like, I'm going to bet on this guy. And then I started learning about the liquid staking that was going to happen in Cardano versus the slashing based punitive staking in Ethereum, which to me, even just that alone, even if that's all we had, I probably still would have bet on Cardano because that seems to be such a gigantic difference for me. It's like if I'm going to park some amount of my assets somewhere, I don't want for there to be any chance that some dude like comes into the vault with a flamethrower and just burns it all up because the bank made some kind of mistake. So
nice. Yeah, you've definitely been around for a long time. So in the crypto space, it's even people that say they got in early, they weren't talking about Mount Gox like that or putting it out across social media at the time. People kind of say they heard of it back then, but didn't get into it. But it's great to see you've been around for a lot of cycles, seen a lot of stuff, seen the rise, I suppose, of Bitcoin and fall of Bitcoin many times, as well as Ethereum. So it's like that. I can't say that I come in for the Charles whiteboard video. I'd love to be able to say it, because every time I hear someone else say it, I'm like, yeah, that's a great way that people got into it. But for me, I come in from the trading side, kind of late 16 throughout 17, came in from a trading background, got into crypto through that way. And then after the bull market, the bear market started, I started to look at my portfolio, and I was like, what actually makes sense now when I start to actually look at what I bought? I had bought a bit of ADA because it was one of the next Ethereum killers at the time. I didn't look deeper, but throughout 2018, that's when I started to reevaluate, and my portfolio became very heavy ADA and Bitcoin from then on. And that's kind of the way that it stayed from then on. Was them two were the two that I accumulated a lot of the other stuff back into, because I seen what I liked. And community in Cardano as well is something that I think is a big driver, and it's a big factor of how Cardano will be successful long term, is the solid community that they've built there.
I think that's a really good point. I think that's underestimated. People have been talking about this more recently, but it's becoming really clear to me that the huge advantage in Cardano is the community. And I mean, I had a strange feeling, if everything works the way we want it to, I'm hoping we'll all be looking back, you know, in like 2030, and nobody's even going to distinguish between 2013 crypto guys and 2020 even crypto guys. It's like, hopefully we've achieved so much adoption by then that those kind of like entry dates are meaningless.
Yeah, and I do find as well that sometimes you get people who they've been in or they bought Bitcoin years ago, and they still don't know any more than the person who's come in. I've met people who are in the space 3 months, and they know far more about crypto and about the inner workings of it than people who have been in the space for 6, 7, 8 years. It's so that thing of you're an OG because you're in on a certain date, I don't always buy that. I think people who come in and dive deeper and start learning, then they qualify as an OG far more than just the length of time that you're in the space. So that's kind of, so Cardano right now, what do you think of it, where we are now versus where I suppose we all want to go? How it's a long road, but how do you think we're doing on that road?
I think it's perfect. I think where we are right now is perfect. I think the entire crypto space is still sleeping on the potential detriments of punitive slashing based staking versus the liquid staking like we have in Cardano. I mean, they can use whatever nomenclature they want in Ethereum. Like, they keep trying to talk about liquid staking, but a derivative instrument is not the same as the asset, especially if there's even a non-zero chance of that derivative instrument depegging. And I mean, if you go to the Lido white paper, they lay out 6 risks of their derivative instrument, which provides either that one or something just like it, provides the liquidity that they're talking about in Ethereum. And they tell you one of the risks is, and then they just go on to basically describe depegging. I'm like, man, how can, over a long enough timeline, how can the same amount of money flow into that kind of ecosystem as one that flows into an ecosystem where you can keep your assets in self-custody on a hardware wallet? I mean, this is a very different level of risk. So I mean, I think that's the biggest thing that people are still sleeping on in Cardano. I think the one thing we need to get around to, now that we've sort of laid out, you know, a version of Plutus that can go forward, is additional programming languages. We need to do that thing we've always talked about, attacking the ocean. And now we're starting to get into that now. Now with Midnight, we've got sort of the advent of TypeScript in Cardano, at least from one of the 3 founding entities. And then we've got all the third-party entities with Aiken and everything else, like bringing in, you know, all kinds of languages, which is kind of, you know, what you hope for. And I also hope that one of those, at least one of those, is successful enough that it's sort of institutionally adopted and embraced by IOG. It gets to that point, I think we can have a lot of those third-party developed programming languages for Cardano, but they also need to sort of get some widespread adoption in the ecosystem and some kind of stamp of approval, almost either from a big project using them or IOG embracing them, something like that. So when new developers come in, it's not just an experimental language produced by a third party, but something they know the whole community is behind. I think that's where we've got to go. But I think people are sleeping on where we are right now with the liquid staking alone.
One thing that I would ask is, how do you keep up? Maybe 2 years ago, things weren't as busy. There wasn't as much going on. Not on a maybe weekly basis. There was maybe something, but now it's like daily. There's a big news. So what that I think people would probably want to know, where can I check? Where can I go? How do you find out all the information that you talk about daily? I know everybody can watch you and Paul's channel, but where can people go and read about everything? Who's probably the best sources out there that you would recommend?
Man, for me, it's mainly Twitter, but I think we've reached this tipping point where it has to change a little bit, because exactly what you said is happening. We're reaching this kind of tipping point where there's too much information. Even if you're spending, even if you're spending all day researching every single day, which is basically what I end up doing, we're getting that tipping point where you're still not gonna be able to consume enough information. So I think, at least for me, on the content production side, I'm going to have to start doing more stuff like this so that I can learn from other people like you guys, because there's too much for one person to absorb anymore. And I'm not going to hire a team of researchers. So I'm going to try to just come on live streams like this and try to learn everything that you guys know. That's my strategy going forward.
I don't know if I would be the best source now, so that's not very good advice.
Man, your website has been invaluable to me, especially the Epic calendar. I can't tell you how many times I've gone on there just to look at the Epic calendar. So I'm already leeching information from you, even if you don't know it.
I think sometimes even myself, Paul messaged me earlier. It's like, Liquid just announced mainnet is coming. I'm like, damn, and have to go check Scramble, and I'm already like an hour not late for the news that just come out. And I have follow all these things, but even with Twitter now, it takes, I don't know what way the algorithm works. If you haven't checked something or whatever it works, I probably wouldn't have seen it till tomorrow or the next day. And I can't put alerts on everything, but you're getting to the point where Cardano's becoming so big that it might need a team. And we'll probably talk about news and maybe people buying news companies later, that there is going to be a little bit more dedicated. I know the likes of You Today, and there's a few others, they have articles often, but there's so much every single day that it takes me to be chatting to Paul or to a few other guys or a few different telegrams to see something's going on. And I go scrolling, and every time I see a link, oh, such and such has got news. Oh, this project is coming out. Oh, this project's on testnet. I'm like, what is going on? I can't keep up. But anyway, it's good. It's great for Cardano. Yeah, that's awesome. It's great for us, and it's great to see it growing. But it is, as you say, massive information. But we would be complaining the other way if nothing was happening, I suppose.
True. I have high hopes for Cardano Spot. I was hoping Cardano Spot from Emergo would become kind of like a Twitter of just Cardano stuff, and then just for selfish reasons, just so I could go there and consume everything. So maybe that's an unfounded hope, but it would be great if that happened. If we had one spot that was just all the Cardano news and sort of one compact platform.
Yeah, that will be good, and I see that as well. It's hard to keep up with everything now, and that's, like you said there, about getting on the live streams, talking to other people. That's why I like these types of things. And one of the reasons that I wanted to commit to these things weekly, and you're more than welcome back anytime you want to come on here too.
Thank you.
Because
I will.
Even in the comments, people come in and they ask about certain projects that I might have never heard about, or you get people in the comments who are able to answer other people's questions and stuff like that. And that's what I found, even when I used to do a lot more live streams, was I learned as much from them as other people learned from asking questions of me, because there was people there who knew stuff that I didn't. And it's a great way to get information out there as well. And I think just where you were talking about Cardano and where we are right now, I think right now, to the outside world, outside of Cardano, we'll look back at the last 3 months, and I think the next 3 to 6 months as a pivotal time for Cardano. When you look at, you touched on the different languages that are being built that will allow more developers to come in and build on Cardano, because that has been a big barrier for dApps building on Cardano, is developers thinking you have to know Haskell and that's the only way to build. But I think what we're seeing now, we're seeing lots of different options coming out there. And in another year's time or 2 years' time, we'll look back and say, this is the kind of 6-9 months where a lot of the start of the infrastructure for attracting bigger developers in was built. Like we see the likes of Alessandro has been building so much for developers over the last probably year or 2 years now. And there's more and more people like him starting to come in and starting to open source what they're doing to encourage more people to build on Cardano.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be huge. I think the open source thing, because we have like such a strong open source ethos in Cardano, I think it's gonna push our ecosystem in a slightly different direction. I mean, obviously it's also strong in crypto in general, but I think it's like such a part of our DNA in Cardano. I think that's gonna push us in a really good direction.
Yeah, look, I understand why projects can't always open source everything, but the ones that do open source contracts or different ways of building things, even open sourcing part of it, is a great way to encourage more builders. Obviously, you don't want to give everything you have to competitors that are building, but if you can give parts of what you're doing, then it really encourages new innovation on the chain. Paddy, do you want to take us into some of the latest of what's going on with Cardano?
Let's get into some news, chat about a few topics. So let me present.
And thanks everyone for tuning in as well. Give the video a like or share it out if you want to bring other people in. Really do appreciate that. Are you sharing a screen, Paddy? Or
yeah, I'm going to share this screen now. I want to go for this one. Let me know when you can see. Yeah,
should be up now.
Awesome. So what I'll do is, I guess the next 40 minutes plus probably. I don't know what, we don't really have a cutoff time yet. So maybe even an hour. God knows how long we'll go on for, Paul. What are we doing?
Yeah, I brought a beer just in case we do go longer. So
keep you going. So we're going to Liquid. Obviously, it's a big announcement. So we're going to chat about that. D-Jed or Jed? How does everybody say it? I my accent doesn't allow me to say it Jed because then I read it to Jed. Jed. Jed.
Yeah, I go with Jed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Silent D. Some guy wrote to me, it's a silent D, and then I wrote back J-E. So, bit on Bitcoin as well, going to be listing Jed and Shen. And then a bit on TVL and a bit on maybe CoinDesk being something Charles owns or controlling the media, whatever narrative we want to call it. But anyways, Liquid, guys. To me, that was a surprise. What do you think? Mainnet next week. Potentially testnet's should be kicking off, I would say, today if there's a mainnet next week. So what do you guys think? I guess I was surprised. What do you reckon?
Man, I think Liquid is sort of like in my mind, it's one of the most highly anticipated DeFi projects ever on Cardano. It's like Liquid is, I mean, because it was so early in the Catalyst funding, it's sort of like been with us. It's been this thing that's sort of just been with us all along. So I think there are a lot of people. There are a lot of people waiting for Liquid. And I don't know if I'll really know what to make of sort of its role in the ecosystem. I understand like financially what role it's playing, but like the sort of its role in the evolution of the ecosystem, I think I won't really know what that's going to be until it launches. So I'm really curious. I mean, there's so many different things. Like the tokens had that very high. Here I am talking about price after just talking about the dopamine trigger of talking about price, but the token had such a high valuation during that period when the only tokens in sort of circulation were the ones offered to the Discord users, which was a very limited supply. So you had that skyrocketing of price, which was timed perfectly, with the sort of boom in Cardano DeFi. So you had that very high price, and now all of a sudden we're going to have this minting of the tokens over the course of, I think all of them are minted over the course of just a couple of years. What is it, 2 or 3 years? Like all the tokens get minted through use of the platform. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, I can't fully remember the distribution of it, but I think there's a lot of them come into circulation over the first few years. Oh, yeah, you have it there. Distribution, that's per
Here's
month.
3, roughly, so we could say.
So over the next 3 years, all of the tokens are going to come into circulation. And we've had this like very small number in circulation for quite a while now. So I hope everybody understands sort of what's going to happen here. I'm not convinced that everybody actually understands. I think there might be people out there holding those tokens right now who don't understand
Don't
what
flood anyone's
happens.
bags now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what you're saying there, like, unfortunately, when you start to talk about how things really work in these kind of cases, if you say that, look, the price mightn't skyrocket or it might skyrocket, and then as soon as inflation really kicks in, that price is going to start tanking. You're accused of footing someone's bag or footing a project, but this isn't about, to me anyway, it's not about the project. I'm really looking forward to the project and what can be done with it. When you see money markets launch on other blockchains, other ecosystems, again, back to price, it generally does have a really good impact on the price. It has previously in bull markets anyway, and it does a lot of good because it gives you a lot more options of what you can do with your ADA in our case. And again, the liquid token probably will spike up on this. I didn't actually look at charts yet, but it probably will spike up, and it will spike up on launch. But then inflation kicks in, and we'll see where it goes then. I think in some cases, ADA staking, you touched on the liquid staking and everything earlier on. I think ADA staking is so good, it makes it even harder for DeFi applications to kick off. We talk about TVL, yeah, there's liquid there with a bit of a spike. TVL on Cardano is lower than other chains. And I think ADA staking is so safe and so easy, giving you a return. It sits in your wallet that people are less inclined to jump into some of the DeFi options that are out there. But when things like liquid come out, I think they offer higher potential rewards. Obviously, there's risks in it as well. But I think that's when things will really start to kick off and people will start to use DeFi a lot more on Cardano then.
Just to go into features, in my mind, Liquid is bringing something new, which is great. We have bits and pieces of, the idea, but we don't have this full app that's in most other cryptos. So I'm really looking forward to that. What parts of this are you guys most excited about? Is there anything in particular that you've been waiting on that they're bringing, in particular? And the impact of that, I know people have talked about the recycling of money then is now something that is going to be part of Cardano, and it sort of beefs up the true value of a chain. You see what happens in, let's say, Ethereum, for example. There's loans that are used for other things. It gets recycled into something else. Another loan is taken out. And, we haven't had that. And I don't know what you guys will think, how that will impact Cardano. But we'll stick to features for the minute, and then maybe you can go on to that and let me know what you think the impacts will be. Yeah, anyone of you can go first, I guess.
Man, I think you used a really good term when you talked about the recyclability of money, sort of in crypto in general. So we've got this. Some of the coolest things about Liquid, I think, are some of the composability kind of features, specifically it being a showcase of kind of Cardano staking, the normal base layer staking kind of inside of an application where you're also doing other things with your money. And that brings up one of the big narratives around Liquid this whole time has been the kind of multiple yield thing that's been described by the platform. And I'm really curious to see how people react to it in practice, because various numbers about the multiple yields in Liquid have been thrown around. But when you sort of analyze those various yields that were described, some of them are like, you do this thing, which yields this token, and in that token yields this other token. And it's like, now there's 6 yields or something like that. I don't know the number, but it was like, but some of those were just sort of like intermediate steps that get you to a next step. And you can't, I had a hard time following that logic because they were yields that almost couldn't be harvested. You know what I mean? It was like an intermediate step and it was counted as a yield step. And I was kind of glad when that sort of narrative died down a little bit. And because I was worried that people would hear those things being discussed and think that there's going to be like 6 different streams of income into, their like ADA account they're using, and not understanding that some of those seem to be intermediate steps. So I'm really excited to see a showcase of the composability that can happen in Cardano with our liquid staking. But I'm also curious to see what the reaction is of people when that narrative is applied to how it actually works in practice.
Yeah, exactly. Paul, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I suppose for me, we've seen some of this already with Indigo, in that you can use your ADA as collateral to essentially. I know they're synthetics. You can essentially, it's the same kind of thing. You can take out a loan, so you use the collateral that you have. A lot of, we say, the wealthy people in the world, they use what they own as collateral and take out loans against that to go and buy more stuff, and they leverage the funds that they have, different to leverage trading. But that's what I'm looking forward to with Liquid as well, is being able to utilize some of my portfolio. I would never put a big percentage of my portfolio into any protocol. It's just, some people will jump, they will go nearly all into different protocols. But for me, it doesn't fit my risk reward ratio. I always split my portfolio into different sections, different percentages for different protocols, or some just never leaves my wallet. It sits there in a hardware wallet and won't leave it for 5-10 years time. But with the likes of this, I definitely will jump into this in the beginning, and probably jump in with more funds in the beginning, because that's when generally the rewards that are there, they're higher at that stage. I'll jump in more so for the rewards initially, but then after that, it will be as they start to die down. So as the price of Liquid starts to cool and start to come down, that's part of the rewards. Yeah. So then you start to use the funds. So you put in your ADA, you take out a loan. What else can you do with that? And unfortunately, a lot of times you do see it's just recycling of money. We've seen it with Solana, where there's different protocols built on top. Those two brothers, was it, how many protocols did they build? Something crazy.
A lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the numbers. Now, I'm not saying that's happening here or anything, but that just popped into my head. But that's what you get a lot of times. But I think Liquid will showcase a really good feature, which Indigo have as well, is that I can use my ADA as collateral, but I still get my staking rewards because it's still associated with my wallet. I know there's other pools out there with dexes where the staking rewards go back into the pool, which is great to see that it goes back into the users. But this way, the ADA rewards come directly back to you. Now, you don't have full custody, which is always something to consider. But I think Liquid will, like you mentioned, it's a showcase of what's possible. So it'll be one of the first. There'll be lots more will build alternatives. I think what's happening in Africa, I talked to John O'Connor at the summit, and some of the stuff they're working on in Africa is what I'm really looking forward to. It's called, they refer to it more as RealFi out there. That's what I'm looking forward to seeing as well, and showing people what's possible with crypto, DeFi / RealFi, outside of just what we've seen before.
Awesome. The one thing I wanted to touch on before we move on, and then Paul, I'll get you to check if there's any questions.
Yeah, I see there is some questions coming in the chat. I'm following them, and we will come on to them. And just once we go through the different news items, we will come back, and I'll go back to any question that's in the chat as well. So keep them flowing in. I'm not ignoring them, or don't mean to ignore anyone.
What I was wondering was, maybe you guys can help me, and maybe anybody who's listening, and I haven't researched into it. What will the DAO do? What really can a DAO perform in a DeFi lending protocol that, is going to be released? What are the types of proposals that people would generally propose? Is it to list new tokens, or back new assets, or, make different assets part of your, things you can lend against? These are the type of things that DAO will be doing, because sometimes I wonder that, do people believe owning these tokens, being part of this DAO, they're then the owners per se, indirectly? I've always wondered, what are the purpose of these DAOs, and should people really get involved with them? In my opinion, I don't really value them, and I sort of see them as a bit, they're just there to fill the void and keep a bigger community together. But that's my opinion, and I don't know. I hope nobody listens to me when I talk about that, but that's just what I think. And I'd like to be open and honest about it. But what do you guys think? What can it be used for? What's it there for? What's going to be the purpose? Maybe base it off another sort of protocol that's similar.
suppose you touched on some of the points there in that it could be for adding new asset pairs. It could be, I've seen other ones where it's to vote on taking a percentage of the fees that are earned by the protocol and paying it back to holders of whatever the protocol token is. Again, there's security risks there, and people use DAOs to try and get around that. But we have seen cases over the last few months where maybe a DAO isn't just the full protection that the initial developers think that it's going to be. But things like that could be what the DAO votes on. New assets to be added, what to do with fees, whether to raise interest rates or things like that. We've seen other ones as well. There was one protocol was hacked. What was it called? It wasn't Mango or something like that. On a different
Mango Markets was that Avi Eisenberg hack. I mean, it was an exploit, I guess, not a hack, but an exploit if you want to be nice.
Yeah. And it's like code is law. If code allows it, can you do it is another conversation. But this was on another chain. And I don't know if it's going to be possible on Cardano. I don't know, was that one done with flash loans? Flash loans aren't possible on Cardano as far as I've heard from devs, but that's outside it anyway. But there was a hack exploit there, and the exploiter was able to get a lot of the tokens for the protocol, and then he put in a vote to, I forget what it was, but to pay him back or let him keep most of what he was after taking, and use the protocol treasury to do it. And because he had got so many of the protocol tokens in the exploit, he was able to come in and vote and pass that vote that he should be paid and allowed to keep. And so you could go that extreme on what a DAO could do.
Smart. It was very smart.
Yeah, he got arrested though after that.
Yeah, he's sitting in. He made the mistake of stepping foot in Puerto Rico, which is a U.S. territory. So he's sitting in a jail in Puerto Rico, about to be transferred to New York. He's right now has criminal charges. The SEC is going after him, and the CFTC. They're all going after him.
They're looking to make an example.
Not going to end well. Definitely not going to end well. Any closing remarks on Liquid? I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's like the story arc that we've needed. We've needed to see the fruition of this story arc. It's been with us so long. I think we got to see this one. We got to see this one actually launch.
Yeah, I think I've been talking about Liquid for 18 months or more. I don't know when I had DC on the channel early on when I started the channel, and was looking forward to Liquid and in general money markets since that. So it's been a long time coming. It will be great to get it out. I'm surprised we haven't had a bigger test net yet. So as soon as they announce a public test net there, I'll be jumping in over the next few days before mainnet.
Definitely. Do you want to check for any questions, Paul? And we'll see what
yeah, let's see what is here. So I can't go back on everyone that said hello, but thanks very much for tuning in. We do really appreciate it. Let's see what we've missed. Thoughts on Optum finance bonds? For me, I think they're a good option for SPOs to get that initial stake. So people who don't understand, when you starting a stake pool now, technically it's not too bad. But the biggest obstacle I would say now for starting a stake pool on Cardano is the marketing and getting enough stake to actually produce blocks. So Optum Finance have created bonds where the SPO can come in and pay extra ADA to people who actually provide ADA into the bond. So they can set it for, I think they can set it for any amount. $1 million seems to be the common one. I've seen some for 500K as well, but you do need 1 to 2 million to have a good chance of getting blocks in most epochs. So they're great for kickstarting a pool like that. It's if the SPO doesn't use that and run with it to help them get more delegation, then it can become very costly to maintain it. But it's definitely good to have options like that. And I think Optum are only getting started. They do have lots of other plans for what they're going to bring to Cardano as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's kind of adding transparency to something that was happening kind of through, backroom deals previously. I remember even when I started my pool, I had just random people I'd never heard of hitting me up and demanding to know how much extra I would pay them if they gave me X amount of ADA in delegation. It's hilariously, it still happens today. All people hit me up with ludicrously low amounts of ADA and demanding how much extra I will pay them on the side without telling everybody else to delegate to my pool. Sometimes ludicrously low amounts of ADA. And I'm like, dude, I didn't do this when I had almost zero delegation. I definitely wouldn't do it now, but this adds at least a level of transparency to what was already happening in backroom deals, previous. So I think that part's good.
Yeah. Actually, one question, I'm jumping to the top of the queue, but this is related. Just how is it not the ideal Cybele attack provider? Or maybe I'm pronouncing Cybele.
I would go for that and say is that generally the quickest bond, I can't remember who it was, but it's a well-known stake pool operator that I've seen the name of, was one of the first ones. My brain's leaving me, but they're generally trusted people, and they've been there quite a while, and maybe it's to push them on. I don't know if if a brand new stake pool operator is going to get enough to be able to even perform any form of attack. It would take millions and millions of ADA worth of bond creation that people just aren't going to go into. And also there's a massive trust factor. A totally random person trying to raise 10 billion. I think we worked it out before, Paul, didn't we? There was a certain amount of billions we needed to be able to perform a bit of an attack. So I can't see it. What I would say, it is basically a way of accelerating a pool getting started and allows it to become a business. People can invest, and that's the good side about it. They're investing, the people who are investing in them, and they want to make it a successful business. Because if they don't do that, I presume there's abilities to remove that staking just like anybody else if they're performing. There's bound to be some forms of T's and C's. I haven't looked into that side of it, but I can't see it being an attack factor.
No, you see, the SPO has to prepay, I don't know, is it 10 or 12 weeks? I can't remember from what I looked, but they have to prepay a certain amount of weeks, or not epochs, of the reward or the rewards that the person who submits the ADA is going to get. And then they have access to, as far as I know, the delegation key, so it can be delegated to their pool. Technically, it's probably a possible attack vector, but realistically, it just wouldn't be possible. The amount of ADA you would need to get from this, and the amount you would need to put up initially and convince people to join your bond, you would need, I don't know how many pools you would need at this stage to actually perform the attack as well. So I'm just going back through to see if I missed any other questions before we go on to the next topic. I don't think so, but if I have missed questions, do drop them in then again.
Good. So, Jed is coming.
There's one question there about HSE records. Can medical records be put onto the blockchain? The HSE says it will take up to 7 years to develop something. So
the only thing I would say about that is I don't think there is a decentralized data storage that would be up to the amount of data capacity needed. Speaking from day job and software engineering, I haven't worked with a company that size, but even a small company had been terabytes of data that they would have for record keeping. And the problem that I have is I don't expect that to be on blockchain per se. I would expect a form of decentralized data storage where everything is perfectly replicable and safe and encryptable. There are all the problems. Would I say put that on to Cardano? No, because I would say the HSE records, which is Irish Medical, for anybody sort of wondering what it is, will be terabytes and terabytes of data. Could it be done? Yeah, but it would need to be something amazing implemented for that. I know there is decentralized data storage solutions, but I think something at that level is going to take a very unique solution that more than likely could be used for a lot of companies, but I just don't think it's built for it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, this is a very interesting use case because we've had, like you said, we've had these decentralized sort of blockchain based storage use cases attacked by various projects like over the years, but it seems like none of them really caught on. I don't know if the incentive systems weren't right. If people just aren't, on a decentralized basis, aren't willing to provide storage. I don't know what it is. And I don't even know how on Cardano, how we'd run something like that, if it'd have to be its own side chain or I'm thinking though, I agree with you. I think eventually we have to have some kind of decentralized storage if we're going to attack a use case like this, just because the storage demands are so high. I wonder, what do you guys think? How far out on the timeline do you think we could actually have something like that to do this by decentralized storage, and not maybe the other option, which is maybe have some kind of, I don't know, have it on centralized servers, but have it only accessible by some kind of zero knowledge cryptography that operates on chain or something like that. How long do you guys think we'd have to go out before we get sort of the truly decentralized version where it's being hosted on various computers all over?
I don't think we're too far away, considering, as you guys know, technology moves pretty fast. There's a lot of hurdles in terms of security and encryption of those files. So if it is a decentralized data storage, two big problems that I see is the security and the replication of that data to make it always accessible. So if I'm going to decide to put any data out there onto something that's decentralized and not Amazon Cloud, where everybody goes anyways, I need to know that those two things are satisfied, which are my most important. And then we'll move into speed and delivery and all that. But if I'm putting out medical records, they're private, they're confidential. They need to be massively secure. If that system is hacked in any way, that is a massive leak of personal informational data that a lot of people could use for a lot of fun things. So tackling those two problems, and I know a lot of the NFTs on Cardano, they're stored on they're stored outside the chain. There is a few things on chain, and that's becoming the norm. Where Cardano is the reference to the data, which I would expect. I don't think it needs to be on chain, because then it bloats into massive amounts of data storage. I would say within the next couple of years, there will be a good solution. I know we have the likes of Filecoin, which is probably the most advanced in that area, and I do expect more players to come in there.
Yeah, for me, it's not an area in blockchain I've kept up with, really. Decentralized storage, I know Filecoin, I was going to mention it there, you just mentioned it, is one of the biggest names that I know. So I'm not sure how close we are. Like, as Paddy said, it's going to be massive amounts of data that needs to be stored. I think the encryption and storing them safely would be fine, but it's how big it actually gets over time, the actual volume of the records, and trying to find a solution that's decentralized and the speed of access to it and how quickly you can pull back the records would be the big part on it. One other question that I missed was, and it wasn't that one, it was related. Someone was asking about a wallet, what wallet to use. Me personally, I use Eternal for most things. I also use Flint on mobile. I know Eternal, some people don't like it because it's too complicated. I think when you come in from another chain, Eternal can be a bit overwhelming. So I would say Flint is another good one that's very close to MetaMask, what people will be used to. You have Nami as well. And then one of these, hardware wallet, I actually got a new one because I've seen so many people hacked lately. I was like, I have some crypto sitting on wallets from back in 2017, and I can't fully remember. I didn't understand the security ramifications back then when I was storing my seed phrases. So over the next week or so, I'm going to be redoing all of mine onto new hardware wallets, just to make sure. When you see some of the people who, again, we talked about earlier, about people who are in the industry for years, considered OGs, getting hacked, and sometimes even people that are there a long time don't have security up to scratch. So I'd say if you have any decent amount of crypto at all, get a hardware wallet if you can. I think the Nano S is $60-70 now, something like that. So it's worth it for me anyway.
Very, very, very good advice, Paul. That was a good one for one of your new YouTube shorts. I meant to say to you about that I get notifications on your YouTube shorts, but I don't get notifications on anything else. I don't know what on my phone. On my phone, I don't know what it is. It just
I think YouTube are trying to push the shorts. I put out one yesterday and one today just to test, and they definitely got quicker reaction than the normal videos do. So I'm going to see how they go, just for small topics like that.
Yeah, well, what I mean is, whenever I get my massive notification list, it's always like right there. I'm like, oh, Paul put out a short. That's
interesting.
Reminded me to tell you that.
Right, we'll go back to the latest on Cardano. So,
Jed stablecoin. I guess we haven't got an official release date, have we? Has anyone got anything? Is it this week, next week? Early Feb?
I think we've got a next week. I think I've seen next week in some of the stuff circulating around from Coty in the last couple of days.
Yeah, I don't think they know the exact date themselves yet. They're waiting on, I think they said chain sync. I'm not sure what they're using for that, but they said it takes 14 days. They started it a week ago, so they're expecting it next week, but they haven't committed to a day yet for launching. It will be great to see Jed out. I see one of the questions there was about, will Jed be available on centralized exchanges? Bitrue have announced already that, you have it there, that they will list it for, they probably will be the first centralized. I've seen MinSwap have said, Wing Riders have said as well that they will have liquidity pools for it. So I'm not sure. I'm sure over time we will see more centralized exchanges, especially if the volume grows, then they're going to come in as well and start listing it too.
Yeah, I would expect Bitrue to have, maybe they've placed orders and might get in quite early if they are going to begin listing it. That is, that is awesome to see. I would like to see Jed ADA sort of pairings on exchanges. I know we got USDT taking over the world, but it would be great to see Jed getting into the same sort of level of usage and pairings. Shen also, I'm very interested to see where the pricing of Shen's going to be. I don't have an idea of how volatile that's going to be. It's interesting to me. It's not a stable coin. It's the intrinsic value of the collateralization. So that's going to be. I don't know what you guys think of that. Have you thought about that? How Shen pricing is going to happen, or what's it? What is it based off, basically?
Yeah. So the Shen pricing is so interesting, right? Because it's the reserve coin, and it can only be minted and burned at certain times, depending on where we are compared to those 400% and 800% collateralization levels. I'm interested to see how that goes. Yeah, there's the table. This table, I think for a lot of people, it was hard to visualize how all this worked until you see this exact table here that shows below this 400% level, you can not mint, you can't mint Jed and you can't burn Shen, which makes sense because they want to prioritize the Jed users to be able to get it in and out of Jed and back to ADA. They don't want the Shen users burning and taking them even lower below that 400% level. And then in between 400% and 800%, you can do all four things, because there are basically only four things possible in Jed: minting and burning Jed, minting and burning Shen. And then above 800, you can't mint any more Shen, so that the rewards of the Shen holders don't get diluted. The system is fascinating to me, but I have no clue what Shen's going to be valued at based on the way the system works.
That's what I was wondering. And if you can't mint anymore, I was going to myself, well, if you can't mint anymore, the price is likely to go up, especially on these exchanges where people are going to buy and sell them based on that idea. So once it gets to 800%, not financial advice before I talk about this, once someone says, right, it's hit 800%, they're not going to mint anymore for a while. So it's likely the price is going to go up, and that's the way I would perceive it. And that's likely what would be the thought process on exchange trading. But I'm really looking forward. It's so fascinating, yeah, obviously, and all of this is fascinating, and it's different, and we don't have this, and I know we've had crazy times with stable coins over the past 2 years, and we'll not talk about the problems that we've seen in crypto there. We could go on all night. But this is different, and and people have asked me about the security of it, and I've been showing them this picture and a few other pictures and discussing things and sending them to Paul's YouTube video. It is completely different. The whole process, and my view, security wise, it's a lot safer. Is it 100% safe? Who knows? Someone always finds ways to find holes in different things. But I would guess things should be able to be fixable to that extent. But I don't see nothing like the collapse of Luna happening because there's so much assets being put behind it.
Yeah, just on Shen here, Robin said at launch isn't one Shen equal to one ADA. It's, from my understanding, it will be one Shen equals 4 ADA, because to mint Shen, you have to put in 4x what the, so you have to put in $4 for every Shen that you want to mint. So, or $4 worth of ADA. So to mint Jed, you put in $1 worth of ADA. That gives you one Jed. But to do it for Shen, it will have to be $4 worth. So that's what keeps the collateral rising up. If we tried to do something like this, thankfully this didn't launch in, was it September 21 or something around there, where we were hitting highs for ADA, because if it went in then and everyone went in at that stage, then the system comes under pressure and potentially depegs. And that's a risk that a lot of people ask about, is can it depeg? Again, technically, it probably could depeg, but launching right now is a good market to be launching into, because hopefully we're close to the bottom of the bear market. And with ADA going in right now at these types of values, as the price of ADA rises, which we all hope it does, then that will help the collateral ratios as well. Staking rewards all go back into the pool as well. So in terms of the price of Shen, it's very hard to call what that's going to be. I know when Shahaf was on the channel, he said that buying Shen is essentially going long on the price of ADA, because you put in your ADA. If you think ADA, the price of ADA is going to go up, and you put it in for Shen, then if the price of ADA goes up, great, because the price of Shen is going to go up, because the collateral in the pool is worth more and there's more rewards and fees and everything going into the pool. I would say it's not just as clear as going long on ADA, and you do have the risk that if the markets do have a pullback and the collateral goes under 400%, you can't actually burn your Shen. Once we have it on dexes and that, you could always sell it off, but potentially there's going to be a discrepancy in the price. So if you're not able to burn it at the source, then there's a good chance that you're going to have to sell it at a discounted rate on the DEX if you do need that liquidity straight away. I've seen some people talking about going very heavy into Shen because of the potential for it. Like I talked about earlier, for my own portfolio, I split it up. I might put a small percentage into it, but for me, I'm going to sit and I'm going to watch and see how it plays out for the first while, see how it all works, get used to it. I would say to anyone getting into any protocol first, make sure have a play around with small money first till you're happy with how it works and you understand both the risks and rewards, because all of these things bring it. I think overall Jed will be very good for Cardano. We have needed stable coins. We really have needed them in the ecosystem, especially in the DeFi side. It really will kick things off, and especially with liquid coming in with money markets as well, it should be a good time for Cardano over the next while.
So we'll move into a bit of a topic on Cody and stablecoin. So quick one on stablecoin sort of regulation and worries on that bit. So let me go into Cody. Cody's doing quite well because of the news, and I'm not giving anybody any advice on anything on what to do. Cody has, in my opinion, Cody has been waiting on this for quite some time. It's been promised to the Cody network for some time. Been making it happen. What are your guys' thoughts on Cody being part of this? I speak to a lot of guys in the network there. They all seem like really nice guys. What do you guys think about that? And also the regulatory sort of aspect, is Jed outside regulations of the SEC? I'm not too caught up on that side of things. So, is there anything that we should worry about? I know everybody talks about, to give an example for when you're answering, USDT. Everybody wants to know, is it really backed up? Is there really that amount of fiat backing this thing up? And, they print some things now and again. They go, yeah, look, it's fine. It's no problem. Don't worry about it. But is it really? But anyways, that's to give you an idea. So what do you reckon, Army of Spies?
Man, yeah. So obviously, I've in the past I've thought a lot and talked a lot about this. I'll call it like a positive conspiracy theory, but my little sort of back pocket theory. The second I saw, so it's interesting. We just talked about. It's a good thing it wasn't launched in September of 21. That was, I remember, they announced that Coty was going to develop JED at that Cardano summit right then, which was at all-time high prices. So it's a good thing they weren't announcing it's launching right now. They're just announcing who's going to develop it. But my theory, ever since I saw Shahaf Bar-Geffen get up on that stage, immediately my theory was Charles is a very clever guy. IOG and the Cardano Foundation, they've been very clever, in my opinion, from a regulatory perspective throughout the development of Cardano. Doing the ICO in Japan under Japanese law, having almost entirely Asian investors. There were investors from other countries in Asia, but doing the entire thing in Japan under Japanese law, super clever, especially in that era when everybody was doing ICOs in the Western world. EOS famously did that $4 billion ICO, whatever it was, and then got slapped by the SEC, a couple of years later. Cardano's been very clever. And I think my theory has always been Charles is also being clever here. He is looking in a future where we might possibly have very heavy stablecoin regulation in North America and Europe, but Coty is in Israel. It's outside the EU. It's not in the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. Maybe that's a layer of insulation.
Yeah. And they generally do their own thing, I suppose. They don't have, well, they're not controlled. That's a good question. Maybe is a jurisdictional sort of things from the US there. I know they're quite friendly, all Europe and America with Israel, but I guess it could be it's probably the most friendliest outsider, and you could be onto something.
Yeah, it's super interesting because it's not to say that like the US SEC is more than happy to try to serve. Let's say they're after, some crypto entity based out of Singapore or wherever, even if they have 0 US citizens working for that company. If they're after that company, they're just going to serve them anytime any of those people step foot inside the US or its territories, just like they did with Avi Eisenberg when he was in Puerto Rico recently. It's like they're more than happy to serve them, but if you don't have any US citizen inside the company and they don't step foot in the US, it's a different practical matter as far as actually dragging them into court.
Yeah, it's an interesting, I hadn't considered that aspect before. It's been something I've said to a few people as well, wondering why a non-Cardano project is running the front end of the Cardano stablecoin, because the contracts are all created by IOG. They seem to have done all of the work on the back end, but it's a very good point about the regulation side when you consider, as you've talked about, the token sale or ICO or whatever we call it that Cardano had, how careful they were with that. It's a good point I hadn't considered before on the regulation side, because regulation will come, especially UST and what happened there with Luna and everything. That will really escalate on the stablecoin side. Now, that's a completely different type of stablecoin than what JED is going to be. And we didn't actually mention that JED initially, a lot of people talked about it, myself included, talked about it as an algorithmic stablecoin. And now I think Coty have put out something lately talking about how it's an over-collateralized stablecoin rather than an algorithmic one. And it does make sense when you see how it's going to be over-collateralized. A lot of times an algorithmic one it might be a small bit over-collateralized, but it's to do with minting and burning more based on how the markets are going rather than purely based on how much ADA is sitting in the smart contract for it. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. And it's definitely a good theory, I'd say.
Yeah, I love. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Paddy.
No, I said that's the same. Yeah.
I've always thought it explains like one of the big criticisms. It's not even a big criticism, but one of the most prevalent criticisms of the Coty JED sort of project. People are like, wait a second, this is Cardano. We know that some of the fees are going to go to the Shen holders. Some of the fees are going to go to the Coty treasury to then sort of be streamlined out to, the Coty ecosystem. And I've always thought of it as That's just a premium we're paying to get our stablecoin situated in a preferable jurisdiction. We're paying that premium so that if the EU, the US, Canada, all these Western jurisdictions, if they come down on all the stable coins, what's important is not that some piece of the fees are going somewhere outside of Cardano, even though Coti's kind of a sister ecosystem. It's like what's important in that scenario is which stable coins can survive. And if that jurisdictional situation allows you to survive, it's worth paying that fee, you know, depending on how much of it is.
Yeah, but this was the bit that I read on fees, and you're exactly right. There is that distribution into the Cody ecosystem, which I think will give it a great boost, and it feels like a partial transaction fees. You know, when you're using a DEX on Cardano and you get that there's a little batcher fee and there's another maybe front end fee on some of them. You go, so we'll see like just a Cody fee is coming here, and they're just doing the work for us. But I guess that's what it is.
Yeah, I think I heard today it's 0.5% of every transaction will be taken and the ADA will be sold into Coti to go into the Coti treasury. And I was kind of like, why isn't that going to a Cardano project? But what you said there makes a lot of sense. And maybe that is the fee that we pay to try and keep the stablecoin safer on the regulation side. And also have said that there'll be certain countries won't be able to mint JED either. They won't be able to use the contracts, but it's basically just the front end is going to block them based on an IP. They're not doing KYC or anything like that. But again, that's another, I'd say, soft measure to try and keep certain jurisdictions out. We all know if someone wants to get in, there's lots of ways to get in, but we won't give that advice.
Yeah. But I'll move on to the next part of this, and it sort of segues over. And you can give a rough idea, but it's total value locked. Okay, so we have JED coming. Yeah, it's likely to have an impact on this, you know, and Cardano's had it sort of had this thrown at it for the past forever that we don't have a good TVL. Now Liquid will contribute, JED will contribute, World Mobile is contributing at the minute with the Earthnode NFT locking. You know, they're all contributing. You know, what do you guys see for the future of TVL? And even to add a little bit to it, the JED locking, you know, how high could that go? Because, you know, it's massive amounts of over collateralization.
For me, I think it's very hard to put a number on where we are. It will come back as well to are we seeing the tail end of the bear market right now, or are we just getting a bear market rally to go to new lows? That will have an impact in the short term. Longer term, things like JED, other stable coins coming in as well is really going to push up the TVL. And like what we said about Liquid, that you can get involved in that, and the ADA, you still earn the ADA staking rewards. It's not the same as having the ADA in your actual wallet, but things like that definitely will help the Cardano TVL. And I know lots of people don't like using TVL as a metric for things we've mentioned here, that you can build protocols on top of protocols and the same one ADA is used 5 times in TVL and stuff like that. But it is still a metric that gives an idea of what's going on. In the last bull market, Cardano wasn't ready for DeFi, and that's the way it was. Like, the chain wasn't ready to build the types of protocols that previous to this have been the ones that have been rated as the DeFi protocols. When the next one comes along, we'll be in a lot different situation, and hopefully we won't be looking back at Cardano TVL saying, oh, it's so small compared to everyone else, and I don't think we will.
Yeah, Paul has a much more reasonable approach to this than I do. I'm so torn because on the one hand, it's like you put any game in front of us, and of course I want Cardano to compete very well in that game, you know, and the rules make the game. And if TVL is the metric by which we're measuring this game, then of course you want Cardano to do well. But then at the same time, another part of me, probably a bigger part of me, thinks that TVL is the most anti-Satoshi invention in all of crypto. It's like, if we could have done one thing that would really make Satoshi angry, I think it's TVL. I think that's the thing. Like, taking the one thing he didn't want to be a part of crypto, locking your assets with a single party. We'll call even a smart contract, you know, run by a DAO, I'm going to call it a single point of failure. And it's like, we already had this in TradFi. We called them banks. It was the whole thing Satoshi was trying to get away from. I also, part of me feels like TVL is just an artifact of the account balance system in Ethereum. Like, they couldn't build dexes the way we can build them in Cardano. It couldn't be done on an account balance basis. It has to look like an AMM. So you kind of, if you want to have liquidity in that dex, you have to lock those assets. And so I almost feel like it's like this artifact, something left over from a previous deficit in the EVM world. And now it's being applied to us, even though we can do it. We can have dexes that aren't EVMs or that aren't AMMs, you know. But then again, I think what Paul said is absolutely true. If these are the rules of the game, you know, we want to win the game. And if that's the rule, then I guess we're stuck with that. I'm just hoping we go through this evolution where people look at total value locked and they're like, those are slave assets. That's a slavery of my assets. Free my assets. That's what I'm saying. Let our assets be free like Satoshi wanted them to be.
That it should be rebranded to well, based in Cardano, because there's no locking in terms of staking. There's 70+% of staking going on. Was it about 10 billion maybe? No, my math is off at the minute in terms of the USD value. But the total value liquid, so you can move that and do things with it. Is that not better? Is that not something that you want? You know, to me, that sounds better. You know, people can go and use their token to do things and generate wealth and generate income, create fees, you know, create more transactions rather than I have to wait till the end of never to get my Ethereum unstaked. I know I can go and get a wrap card and blah, 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 you know, and then there's other ones that have 15 days unstaking, you know. Liquid, to me, it should be rebranded. Maybe we need to change the narrative on it, the total value liquid, you know, and what is in the money that's in the ecosystem that can be used for everything is the way that I would see it. But you're right, we got to, if we win this game, we can also create our own narrative as whenever you change the game, isn't it? Because this is the one that everybody throws at us.
Yeah, look, I want to win as well. I come from playing sports growing up and that, so I have that competitive side that I want to see Cardano. When people throw the metric back, I'm like, oh, you try and get into explaining different things and that, but I think let outside judge based on the next bull cycle, because that's when we can't have excuses for things weren't ready. Things weren't there in the last bull market, which they should be for this bull market. So that's when I think you can judge Cardano TVL. If that's still going to be one of the metrics, that's when we can judge. And yeah, if we could put ADA staking in there, I think we would be right up behind Ethereum in terms of TVL. We would be number 2 in overall chains, but they don't consider Cardano staking as part of that, even though that is one of the hard bits that the DeFi protocols need to get over, is that give people more incentive than what they get from the staking rewards they earn, plus the security. So to me, that's always worth an extra few percent, having the security of it being in my own wallet. So you need to offer me a bit extra if I'm going to put my funds in to have a bigger reward versus risk profile there.
Yep, exactly. I think we covered that. Paul, do you want to check for questions before we move on to...
Yeah, I see Network with Entrepreneurs Show has put this one in about FLAC Finance, the pros, cons according to you. And they are running a token sale, not getting into the token sale project. I'm not sure where they are. I know the team are the guys who have put together Typhoon Wallet and Cardano Scan. So definitely Cardano people at heart, people that have been building for the community. From what I know of the project, I initially didn't look deeper back at the beginning of last year because of the tokenomics, and they were initially set to have 50% of the overall supply dropping on day one, which to me was just, I wasn't getting involved on the token side because of that, because it just meant the market was going to be flooded. But I think that's changed a lot because they didn't get the interest. And I would say part of that might have been in around the tokenomics, people not wanting to get in that early. But the project it's related again to, as far as I know, DeFi loans, being able to use your crypto in the real world, being able to take out loans. I think India is their first target, but I'm not sure of much more about the project outside that. I don't know if either of you have.
I haven't been a big follower, you know. I haven't, delved into it. You know, I know it's another sort of DeFi sort of protocol. And I think what we could do is maybe next week do a deep dive into it for the same as what we've done with Jed, and so I have more questions. My opinion, the people behind it, which I thought originally when it was announced, great team. That was my initial reaction, and also proven along with well-established members of the community, which is rare. That was my initial thought,
and done a lot without funding in the community.
Yeah. And that, and once I seen that, I was like, yeah, this guy's, and these guys, they're great. This is going to be a success. And that was my instant thought. From then, I haven't looked into it much, and I'll be honest about that, but I will.
And then the last question I can see at the minute is, how are the fees from Shen distributed? The fees go back into, most of the fees from minting and burning go into the pool, and essentially the pool is there for the collateral. The overall collateral percentage is worked out based on what's in the pool. So most of the fees, apart from the 0.5% that goes to Cody, the rest go into the pool, as well as staking rewards. And I see some people thinking that when you own Shen, that you're going to be paid out fees just for holding Shen. But from my understanding, it's that all the fees go into the pool. So that essentially drives up the price of Shen overall when there's more in the pool, rather than you actually being paid out like you're paid out with your ADA staking rewards that are paid directly to you. As far as I know, it's not going to be anything like that. It's more that all the fees go into the pool, which in turn helps Shen. Well, Jed and Shen.
I was just trying to find your video with Shahaf is a great video on it. Where is it?
Yeah, it's in some of the most recent, if anyone wants to check it out. I think it was 2-3 weeks ago I talked to him, and we'll probably sit down with him in another 2 or 3 weeks after Jed is launched to see how it's going, and questions that the community have then I can put to him to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, there. So it was, a couple of weeks ago. So anybody goes on the Paul's channel, you'll find it in his videos list. It's great video.
Oh, Paddy, you didn't like that video.
Sorry.
That's the first thing you're meant to do when you go onto the video.
I am guilty.
Caught red-handed.
No, I had unliked it to like it again.
Oh, that's okay. I'll let you ace off. Sorry, I didn't check, Army of Spies, what your time was like. We're waffling on here.
I've got a question for you guys. Do you guys think that Shen will trade at a discount on the secondary markets versus the amount of ADA you get when you burn the Shen? I'm wondering if it has to, because it'll be easier to trade. It'll probably be easier just to trade it on a DEX than to go in and actually burn it, or maybe not. What do you guys think?
I think it could do, and that's what I was saying earlier, where once it gets to a point there's not going to be any more Shen created. Well, that's not going to happen, because there's going to be more of that, more Jed generated, which will allow more Shen to be generated. But then I was thinking, if it comes to a point where it's over 800%, and ADA prices are going up, it'll keep it above 800%. Let's say we go back to $3 hypothetically. Who knows if that'll happen? But the everything invested now will make the over collateralization massive in percentage. So there might not be any more Shen generated for quite some time. Will that then make it more valuable? Will people trade it more in that sense? I think so. I can see them doing that. Now, but that will probably happen the other way around. So when it's below and there's a bit of a panic, it could make people sell off at a bit of a discount to get out, if that's what they're worried about. But I'm not fully aware how they've gamed it up. And I'm sure a lot of brilliant minds have went into this and they've looked at it and researched and thought about it. But every part of me is thinking, I might panic a bit if it goes under, and I might be happy enough to take a couple of dollars loss on it if it's going to go, and then I'll rebuy again or whatever. I'm going to say above 800, the price might go up. That's my guess.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you guys think between 400 and 800? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it trades very close. There might be a 3-4% difference in it, because that's the kind of fees you'd be paying to burn it at the actual source, at the contract. But I would expect someone to create an arbitrage bot that, after once it's out and people find out how it all works, to be monitoring dexes and to keep the peg there. The same way we have the peg with stable coins, that generally they keep their peg, especially USDC, because if it ever drops below, people are willing to buy it up because you can go at the source and you could sell it for $1. So I think we'll have something similar with Shen as well, in that people will keep that peg and someone will create a bot to actually to do that and buy and sell it and make their small fees to keep the price relatively close, but slightly cheaper on dexes due to the extra fees on the contract. And again, once you go over 800, then the price is in no man's land, because you can't actually buy it. But when you can't burn it at the source, then definitely going to be a discount on the exchanges, because people will need liquidity. So people who are optimistic long term will be able to come in and buy it up at a discount as well.
It's very exciting, isn't it? It's the unknown of it. It's what's got me so interested. I'm going to be watching it the first couple of days or weeks and going, fully dialed into what's going on. I'm going to be a bit fanatical about it. I don't know about you guys, but I know I will be.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if we have like this ongoing drama of the JED collateralization. All the Shen holders are like, oh no, people get into Shen. We don't want to drop below 400. That kind of thing. That'd be interesting to watch it play out on social media.
Yeah, there'll be lots of influences there as well, trying to push it up, because it does need. That was one of the questions that I had for Shahaf, was how are they encouraging people in the beginning, or have they bigger institutions to actually come in and put in funds? So I heard him today saying on another show that they have Ada Whales. I don't think it's the Ada Whale from Twitter, but Ada Whales, holders of Ada, that will be coming in to put in decent sums of money in the beginning to get the initial circulation out there. Vincent asking about price. I'll put this as the overall crypto market. Have we seen the lows of the crypto market? Have we seen the bottom? If you go by the 4-year Bitcoin cycles, we're either at the bottom or we're extremely close right now. But what's your own thoughts, Paddy?
Bottom is in. When we pump, I don't know. So no financial advice from me, but bottom I think is in. I think Bitcoin's bottom was 15,000. I had thought at the time it was, just because it came so far, and it was generally in and around the 80, 90, and that's usually my trading predictions for crypto. When it goes down so far, generally that's about it. It's been shorted all the way down, and then okay, now all the shorting guys have tons of money. It's time to go bullish again. I would say I think the bottom is in. Could there be lows? It took FTX to collapse to go from 20, was it 21, 22 to 15. FTX is massive in terms of crypto. So who else is out there of the same size? Not many of that size. I can't even think. Maybe crypto.com. There's been tons of stuff about those guys. And a lot of movement of funds that are a bit sketchy and a lot of things going on there. If they went, yeah, I could definitely see it retracing everything that's been gained back from FTX and the lower lows put in, maybe down to 7, because they're massive. They would be on par. But I think those guys have sorted themselves out for what was going on, and it was maybe more of a bank run sort of scenario, and they held up. So I don't know if I'm hoping maybe we don't see any more things collapse. We've had enough.
So bottoms in for Paddy, Army of Spies.
Man, I never dare speculate on price, but I think about it the same way you guys do. I tend to think in sort of the stock to flow model, and and look at the stuff that Plan B famously puts out on that. I think the way he graphically represents that is always kind of interesting, even though he was wrong about the peak in the last bull cycle that he got a lot of flack for. But I tend to think about it in that stock to flow, same kind of cycle. I think it is interesting. So crypto.com, that was the one endorsed by Matt Damon, right? He was their spokesperson.
Yeah, venture or something favors the brave was the ad, something like that.
Yeah, the Latin phrase, Fortuna Favet Audacia or whatever. I thought it was interesting because I think he pre-apologized. I think he saw what was happening to all the celebrities around FTX. Yeah, he's like already apologized, so he's in the clear. It's like even if crypto.com collapses, Matt Damon's like, hey, I already apologized. Not my fault anymore. I'm already done apologizing.
Yeah. For me, I hope the bottom's in. I'm not fully convinced just yet. You talked about FTX, Paddy, and we're still seeing some of the knock-on effects of that. Genesis as well, waiting to see how all the creditors out of that, to see if there's any other big entities. It took a while for some of the bigger entities to come out and admit that Luna and everything that happened earlier in the year had completely wrecked them. They tried to hide it. So I'm waiting to see how that all falls and the interest rates over the next 2 months or so. But if we haven't hit the bottom, I expect to have hit it in the next 2 to 3 months. And then you're into accumulation, hopefully sticking to the previous cycles, your accumulation gently going upwards towards the halving next year. But if we're not there, we're very close, I would say. I'm waiting to see where we have to get a pullback after the current run that we've had. So waiting to see where that support level lies when we do get that pullback as well. Let me see, what else have we missed here? If Cardano were to fail, what would be the Achilles heel? I suppose it's like anything in crypto. Regulation could be the Achilles heel of all of crypto. I think for me, fundamentally, Cardano is on the right track, and a lot of what they're doing, they're building slowly, trying to build it right. You're never going to get everything 100% right, but I think overall regulation in crypto could be the Achilles heel, not just for Cardano, but for the overall space, which is why I want to see leaders in the industry getting involved in the regulation, that we're not just sitting back waiting to say, giving out about regulation and saying it's going to be bad and this. Leaders have to get up and get involved. We've seen Charles going and speaking. He kind of, since FTX, he hasn't done it, but leading up to that, before that, he had been up speaking and trying to educate people, trying to educate regulators that not all crypto is bad. There is a lot of good can be done here. It's not all kind of done in the shadowy corners. And unfortunately, FTX didn't help that case when Sam was becoming a trusted face. But I think that's, for me, that would be the main Achilles heel. I think technically Cardano should be good right now. People will talk about, and links into another comment that I've seen there on DeFi and can Cardano handle it? But I think they can with things like sidechains and with input endorsers, which will come probably not this year, but next year. So I would say we're on the right path there. But what about you guys?
Man, I think one of the things I almost don't even dare talk about, because it's so it's in a way it's almost like apocalyptic, but the thing that's been in the back of my head, and it kind of left my list of concerns slightly. My concern over diminished a little bit last year before FTX, when Charles was in Washington doing all the lobbying, and we had a few senators on both sides of the aisle who looked like they were going in the direction of good policy making on crypto. I was like, okay, maybe I don't need to be so concerned about this. But in the back of my mind, the thing that I've really been afraid of for quite a while was some time ago. When was it? Was it last summer or the summer before? I think it might have even been the summer before. It was revealed that Uniswap was under the SEC microscope, and they suddenly pulled all the synthetics off their front end, right? So there are multiple interfaces for Uniswap, and Uniswap Labs pulled the synthetics off theirs. But what I was worried about, it was that possibly the SEC wasn't just interested in the synthetics. Maybe the SEC was looking at Uniswap as an unregistered online securities exchange, and not just the DApp, not just like the interface, not the front end, but the whole protocol. Because we've got this like hope, this aspiration that they don't try to regulate the protocols, they just regulate the interfaces. But what if the SEC, and this is just a what if scenario, but this is one that's been plaguing me for like the last, I don't know if it's been 12 or 24 months or whatever, but the thing that's been worrying me is, what if the SEC is just waiting for the end of the Ripple case and then they file against Uniswap? That's the apocalypse that worries me.
I think, when you're onto something with the SEC or not, I generally think they're waiting on a big win to then set out their boundaries of how they're going to go forward and who is then a target or not a target. And I think they need Ripple to start going after a lot of the players. And what I'm hoping before that is, and put my hand up and say I want Ripple to win. And that's I am not invested in Ripple. I don't hold any Ripple. I don't have any XRP. So it's not about any of that. I just wanted to win just because to give it to them, and it's just to get away from that. But the other side of it is, I want regulation, because then you can't get these guys coming after crypto industries because they just don't like it or they just don't understand it. And that's what it feels to me every time all this comes up. Like these guys just don't understand, and it's not because they're old, or it's just a new financial system and model, and it's being created at the minute. It's being created. It's not something that everybody knows about, so it's very hard to regulate it. But I think you're touching on something with the SEC. They might. Uniswap it could be a target, and there's no reason why they couldn't turn around tomorrow and say, we're going to check it out. But what will happen is if they check out anybody, it's an instant crash. That's basically, you look at what happened to XRP. It didn't really have its bull run and all of that because of the whole investigations. And I'm hoping that sort of model doesn't continue. And I would like to see where a discussion can happen, and a regulation can be set out. I think a lot of crypto companies are afraid to come forward and speak to them, because then they're on the radar. Then they're there, then they know about them, and then they go, well, actually, this is all bad. We're gonna take it to court. Rather than, can I come to you for advice and you can tell us what we can and cannot do, and we'll stay within all these boundaries which nobody knows, that haven't been decided yet, that we're trying to figure out. It's so crazy. It's so crazy. I don't know. Something has to be done. The regulation needs to come so that the SEC isn't on a witch hunt.
Yep, I'd agree with both of you, what you said there. I want to see Ripple win, not because of the coin or anything to do with what they do, but for crypto overall, because it will set a precedent that they can't just pick crypto companies and go after them. If XRP is charged, then it makes every single crypto protocol out there has to look over their shoulder and think, are we next, or what could be next? So that's why I would hope that they win. And like you both kind of said, like, regulation will come. And for me, we just need to be a part of defining what that regulation is going to be. I'll shoot through these questions and we'll try and wrap it up then soon. RealFi projects. For me, World Mobile is one of the ones I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. It's outside of the standard DeFi that we've seen so far. Things that are going on with potential RealFi loans in Africa as well. And that type of stuff for me is what I'm looking forward to. Anything other on your side?
No, nothing else for me. World Mobile is mine, and I'd love to see more. I'd love to see more traditional markets being brought onto within crypto. Telecommunications is huge. I'd love to see more, people trying to break into other industries throughout the world and bringing that within the ecosystems. That would be it for me, I suppose.
Same for me. World Mobile's their mission. I know next to nothing about the token, but their mission is so good. It's so good to have a project with that kind of mission in our ecosystem. I wish we had 10 more World Mobiles just addressing different use cases. I think their mission is so good. Like, every time somebody asks, what have you guys got going on Cardano? What activity is there on Cardano? It's like the first project off my lips, because it's so different than a lot of the stuff going on in the EVM world that's so focused on DeFi and PFP NFTs. This is so outside those boundaries, and it addresses real world concerns. It's something that, like, pretty much anybody, when you explain to them what World Mobile's mission is, everybody understands it. Try to explain how AMMs work, and nobody understands it. Nobody outside of crypto understands it.
Most people inside crypto don't understand how the pools work either.
True.
This one then kind of came back to linked into another question as well about Cardano's block capacity and future congestion with massively increased DeFi. For me, I think we will be fine. We still have the current block size in Cardano on a very basic level. If they needed to increase that, that could be increased. It's just a parameter. But things like input endorsers will really, it'll really increase the throughput and everything that can happen there. For me, it's the finality. I know they mentioned in one of the input endorser articles that they have something as well for finality. For me, that's the one that I would like to see improved. We talked about World Mobile there, and they will be running part of their network on a sidechain. And for me, sidechains will be a huge play going forward for Cardano. Are really starting to go into it now as well. And people are starting to realize that not everything needs to be on the layer 1, and not everything should be. If you look at certain types of applications, especially in gaming and things like that, if you try to put a lot of that on the layer 1, there's not many layer 1s could actually stand up to it. So that's where you have your layer 2s, your side chains, and hopefully in time we'll have roll-ups as well that will open up lots more possibilities as well. But I wouldn't really have a fear for the block capacity on Cardano with what's coming up in line. Yep. But have I missed anything there, or maybe you're afraid of it all falling down?
No, I'd agree with you, Paul. I think we'll be fine.
I agree also. It's like I'm a strong believer in the thing that everybody said all along with blockchains, that they make terrible hard drives, right? But I also believe, man, you could have this beautiful universe of layers where you change the compromises between the 3 legs of the blockchain trilemma, however is convenient for each of those layers. Just have this whole layer verse in Cardano with different compromises between those 3 things: scaling, security, and decentralization. And you can accomplish whatever you want. Do you want super high scaling? Go for it. You can have a whole layer just devoted to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because decentralization in Cardano is such a big, not goal, but it's a big part of what it is. We're never going to have them under 1 second blocks unless something crazy changes out there. If we want to keep the big number of stake pools and the high decentralization that we have, we're never going to have them lightning quick blocks and finality, but we don't need to have that on the layer 1. That's the type of stuff can be on layer 2s or side chains, and that's how it can work together going forward. So I think I have some of the other comments were related back to the price. So I think we've covered all of them. Us stablecoins getting a lot of the attention in Cardano. What about the other developments with the Cardano ecosystem? Less important? I think they're not less important. And earlier on in the call, I talked about that. I think these kind of 6 months or so, we'll look back in a few years as being so important for Cardano in the development of other languages to build on top of Cardano. But right now, stablecoins is big because it's really missing inside of the Cardano ecosystem, especially on DeFi as well. But you do have the likes of Liquid, who announced they're going live next week. There's other protocols out there. Axo is another one. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they bring to the space as well. They're going a different route than lots of the other dexes did already. So there's going to be lots more coming. And right now the hot topic is stablecoins, but that narrative will change over time. When we do get stablecoins and they just become another part of the ecosystem, we'll move on to another topic then.
There was a Cardano bingo. I don't know if you've seen it a long while ago, which had basically a shopping list of everything that we wanted. Stable coins, whether DeFi, we got a real fi, we got our improved performance. All these things are basically just being ticked off as things go on. So hot topic at the minute is Jed. Jed comes out next week, maybe beyond it, something else next week. I'll report Jed now. We've got that.
Do you guys think concentrated liquidity in our dexes will be the next thing once we get Axo and Genius Shield?
Yeah, I think it's the next evolution of the dexes. If you don't want to go all the way to order book dexes, it's the next step in that line. And who is it? There are some dexes. They're Genius. Is that what they're doing? They're doing concentrated. And actually, MuesliSwap talked about it as well, I think.
Oh yeah, recently, right? Recently they had some stuff about sort of, and it seems like different dexes are kind of using different terminology for this, but it all to me looks kind of similar. The concentrated liquidity kind of stuff.
Which like Uniswap v3 has its advantages, but it's not just as good as a lot of people think from the outside. When people done analysis on the fees and stuff like that, there still is a lot lost in fees there. So it is an improvement, but it's still not I don't think we found the ultimate solution for DEXs and decentralized trading yet. I don't think what the solution we're going to use in 4 or 5 years' time, I don't think that's created yet, or it's not fully optimized yet anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think there's such a gigantic gap between what crypto decentralized exchanges can be. Like the impermanent loss thing is such a barrier to entry for people to engage in DeFi in crypto. It's like, it's so terrible, right? It's like, even you explain it to somebody, just if they know nothing about crypto, you explain it to them and they're like, I'm out. Don't want anything to do with this impermanent loss thing. This is way too complicated.
Yeah, and if you want to provide liquidity, you need to have 2 assets for most places as well. We don't have single-sided liquidity yet on Cardano. We do have DEXs that offer zap in, but basically what that does is sells half of one asset for the other. So it's going to evolve, and Axo have some very interesting solutions or ideas there on what they're going to do. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Any other topics? We've definitely went way over time. I enjoyed the conversation. I hope people watching got some value as well or enjoyed it.
I'd say will we cover the news one just as a bit of a last bit of chat for 5-10 minutes and then be done?
Oh, Charles buying CoinDesk?
Yeah, we'll go for a bit of a topic, and see what you guys think. For me, and I've always wanted I've always wanted a Cardano friendly news site that is big in crypto, and and Charles talks about it here. He's going to his YouTube channel, and it's a good thing to listen to. For me, I'm against it. But it is how the media works. You look at all the mainstream medias in the world, and look at who owns them all. That's, you control the news, you control the narrative, is generally the idea. Cardano gets so much bad press, it's unbelievable, and it's all these companies and places and people that are pro Ethereum generally, and not to sound like a crazy man, and making up conspiracy theories. And so that'll be the news tomorrow. Paddy's making up conspiracy theories that everybody's against Cardano. No, it's that. The idea, if I'm buying it, I would be against, because then the narrative would flip to, oh, they're just putting out friendly stuff against Cardano. Oh, it's another pro Cardano news, and then CoinDesk will be anti Ethereum. Whoever wins, you hope that the good stuff, and the good news sites and websites and people who are reporting all the news and all things crypto do be fair, but they don't, and I hope eventually that does happen. And the bad flack that Cardano gets for everything goes away. They are running out of news, as we go through our checklist that I talked about a minute ago, and we end up having everything that everybody else plus more, and it's working, and it's continuing to work, and it doesn't break all the time, and it's not really, it's not designed badly or by someone that's, who just thought about it or copy and pasted ideas. That the news will change, and I'm hoping in the long run it will. I know it will, because it will have everything that everybody else has. What do you guys think? That's my ramble on it anyways. It's not for me.
Yeah, I think it's a no-win situation, because if Charles bought it, and if any cryptocurrency founder bought a news outlet, then immediately anything you ever put out about your own project or protocol, then it's seen as trying to pump your own bags. If you talk negatively, even if you talk and you're in the right to talk negatively about another protocol or project, then it's seen as you're just trying to FUD your competitor. So for me, if you want to spend, I think $200 million was the price tag that was floated around. There's a lot better things you could do for Cardano and for the cryptocurrency space with that type of money. We do need better media, but that's where independent media sources come out. And in particular, or not in particular, but one part of that is even people coming on YouTube is a great place for individuals to get together and give their perspective out there. Media around the world, not just in crypto, is biased. It depends who owns it, will always drive the overall direction or the narrative that comes out of that channel. So for me, it's a no, really.
Yeah, man, the second I heard him talking about it, it was so hard to imagine. Like, I imagined an article in CoinDesk under, Charles' ownership that said, like, Mithril updates coming from IoT. I can't imagine the Ethereum influencers would go crazy on that kind of stuff. Any positive article about Cardano is going to get so much heat from the Ethereum side of the world. You know, again, not to embrace any conspiracy theories, but there are a lot of people over there who will take any opportunity to criticize Cardano, and then any criticism whatsoever of any other blockchain, same exact thing. I mean, but at the same time, I'm like, man, is there a path where we can get sort of like fair media representation of Cardano short of having a giant outlet like this? One of the things that confused me when Charles talked about this, though, he mentioned a revenue figure, and then he mentioned the value that is getting shopped around for, that 200 million. And I wondered if he made a mistake when he mentioned the revenue figure, because he said, given the revenue, the 200 million, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, 50 million, wasn't it?
That's what I heard, but okay, that's exactly what I heard. And I thought maybe I misheard it, because I was like, well, 200 is only a 4x multiple, and I have no idea what media outlets trade for, but 4x in terms of normal corporations, you know, is not like ridiculous. I wondered if you meant 5 million or 500,000, because those two figures seem way more believable to me than I don't know how their revenue works, but I'm in my head, I was trying to figure out how CoinDesk is possibly making 50 million, right?
Yeah, it makes no sense that it would pay itself back based on previous performance in 4 years. Like, something was off on that, or there was a lot of expenses to come out of that 50 million or whatever way it was. But overall, I wouldn't like to see it happening. I don't think it would be good for crypto or for the Cardano image either.
Yeah, especially at 200 million, man. It's
Yeah, there's a lot more. You could build a few deadless turbos and everything like that with 200.
Yeah, well, that's another great topic. We'll have to put in some way. We'll do some.
We won't go there today.
No, not today. We'll be here all night. But I got to finish that one off with 3 no's then. 3 no's from us. Okay.
Right. Closing thought. Actually, one last comment, and then we're closing. Thoughts on 5,000 validator milestone on ETH. I didn't actually see that that's their milestone, but I think a validator on ETH counts once you have 32 Ethereum. So there are some entities there that have thousands, hundreds of thousands of ETH, and they're the ones that control it all. So if they control a couple of hundred nodes at that stage, or validators, I wouldn't count that as a true 5,000 validators for me anyway. It's very different to having individual nodes than having entities that you give control of your stake to. It's very different to what Cardano has.
Agree. This is straight up intellectual dishonesty. This drives me crazy when people talk about that validator number. It's like we have metrics for this. We have a Nakamoto coefficient. We have a MAV. We know how to group. We know that Coinbase is a point of failure in this validator structure. It's not their, whatever it is, 1,200 pools. Like, that's one entity. I mean, that's the only sensible way to think about this. And talking about that validator number as if they're individual parties, that's just straight up intellectual dishonesty to me.
Yeah, I think it was 3 or 4 of a MAV when staking launched first. And I remember looking in the first few weeks, I was tracking it a lot more, but there was only 3 or 4 entities had control of over 50% of the blocks or something like that. So it's very different. They're the type of metrics you would need to look at rather than the number of validators.
Yep.
Definitely.
But Paddy, closing thoughts, anything that we haven't went through here?
No, that was good crack. Thanks for joining us, Army of Spies. It was great having you on, man. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Jump in any week. We'll be here every week. So anytime you got some free time, come in and we'll come up with more. I'll come up with more conspiracy theories that I can bounce off. You can help flesh out a few more.
Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, and let me know anytime. I'll come back here anytime. This is a great time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed your perspective and having a chat as well. As Paddy says, more than welcome any week, even if you want to come in for a part of it or the whole lot of it. Just drop us a message anytime and we can chat. to everyone that watched, thanks very much. Do appreciate it. If you haven't hit that like yet, please do so. Subscribe if you're new. We'll be here every week. Myself and Paddy will be here every week, and hopefully Army of Spies back some weeks. And we're going to look to bring on other guests from the Cardano community as well to get lots of different perspectives. Like we talked about earlier, this can be a great way to learn about what's going on in the community, not just for myself and Paddy, but for you guys and anyone else that comes on as well, because there's always new things happening out there, and it's good to take multiple perspectives into account. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for joining as well, and we'll talk to you next week.
See you later. Bye-bye.